Keith fancied a change. This worked out to be quite handy for me, as it turned out. Well, sort of. He had worked part-time on and off for Paul, the local bike dealer, all the time I had been going there, and he knew his way around the motorbikes. He also knew a lot of people in the biking community. Plus, he had a car, so I figured it was worth enticing him to come and do a bit for me, cash in hand. My dad had been helping me out with collecting stock and delivering motorbikes I had sold, but he was always crazily busy with his own business, and I needed to put something else in place for myself, stand on my own 2 feet. So Keith was a fair bit older than me, in his late 20s then, and already had 7 children of his own. We would bomb about the locality in his red Mini Clubman estate, status quo blasting out with a cassette player non-stop, him being a die-hard big fan of them, and denim jackets too. Me funding the fuel plus bunging him a tenner cash each day. Every Thursday, once a fortnight, we had to abandon motorcycle dismantling for him to call into the local job centre and sign on. I used to sit in the rotten old Mini Clubman with motorcycle dismantlers and our phone number on the side in sticky letters, whilst wryly observing various characters in overalls getting in and out of vans doing exactly the same thing. Such was the different approach to things back then. One of the engineering workshops I took parts to be rebored, the owner offered me 2 bikes that were up at his house for next to nothing. But as long as they went that day, there was always some bloody condition with these people, I found. Keith and I went to look, finding 2 Suzukis, a GT250 and a GT500 in among the ivy and the brambles, lying against a fence. They were complete but past economical revival. There was no way either would fit inside the Mini, let alone both. Pondering on this, we drove back to the yard, grabbing a few tools, and on our return attempted to disassemble them right there in the fella's garden. The amount of time exposed to the British seasons, coupled with their very rudimentary tools, meant it didn't go easily. Despite taking off the front forks and wheel, the 500 was bloody heavy to squeeze into the back of the Mini estate, the weight having the car right down on its suspension stops. Driving back was pretty slow going. It was dark by the time we had unloaded and went back for the other bike, but I was determined not to miss out, having paid up front. This one was even rustier, the bolts and screws point blank refusing to play ball in the torchlight. We couldn't get the forks out of the yokes no matter what we tried, with Keith moaning on about getting back for his tea, and the fella, the owner, looking at his watch and staring at us every few minutes. My pin flew out. I unbolted the fuel tank and anything else that would come off the rotted heap to make it lighter, before pushing the chassis on its flat tyres to the back of the car. Enlisting the owner, we 3 strained, heaved and struggled with the back end into the Mini. I then unbolted the handlebars and instructed the other 2 to lie the bike over as far as it would on its side, using the wiring loom to tie the car's back doors around it. The rear lights of the car were not really visible now, and bumps led to the bike's front wheel bottoming out on the road in a shower of sparks. So it was all pretty dicey, but somehow we got back intact. I swore after that day struggling that some decent tools were needed. A few days later, the dodgy postman called in. I had known him for a few months by then. After one day, on his way to empty our local box, and this later being blown up by some yobs and fireworks, he had seen us unloading a trailer full of motorbikes and stopped to see if there was anything for sale. He told me he had several of his own, but was perpetually skinned. Whenever there was a part I had that he needed, cash would seldom change hands. Instead, various new CDs, electronics, video cassettes, garden tools, and Lord knows what else were offered as trades. This time he wanted the complete engine out of the Suzuki GT500, and I wanted a decent socket set. Next day he appeared again. In the back of the Royal Mail Maestro van was a cracking set, a quarter, 3/8 and a half-inch drives, all in a lovely 3-drawer box. Easily over 100 quid's worth even then. The deal was done. I still have that set, though I often wondered who now did not. Hello, thank you for watching my video. This is the first story from my new book. I wouldn't value it at that, which is charting my stories and escapades as a scrap metal dealer, very young in the early 90s. Appreciate it if you'd subscribe, hear more. Hopefully it'll make you smile. Cheers. Take care.